Hello, lovely viewers, and welcome to Get Well, Stay Well. I'm Felicty Corbin-Wheeler, and today I'm really thrilled to have one of my health heroes with me, Peter Willoughby. Hello, Peter, and welcome to Revelation TV.
Felicity, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's really great to have you because what a difference you've made to the health of so many viewers. And it's all because you have had such a tough time yourself. And, you know, we love it when people have got well and stayed well themselves and then are really dedicating their lives to helping others. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, Felicity, it started back in 1980. I was 17 years old, and just like most 17-year-olds, I was a fit young lad and looking forward to what the world had to offer. But unfortunately, I got run over by a lorry. I was on a motorcycle. It was a head-on collision with a drunken driver, and the chap that was driving the lorry didn't actually want to stay around. So he decided to pop the gears into reverse, and he reversed his lorry back, and the wheels went over me. And then he popped it into first gear, drove away, and the wheels went over me again. So, needless to say, I was left with virtually every bone in my body broken, crushed, and the easiest way to explain what wasn't broken was my right arm and my spine, and I was unconscious, and it was quite a horrific time.
My goodness me, Peter. Well, God obviously had better plans for you than the drunken driver did. And
Yes.
So what happened next? I mean, you were out of it. You were obviously unconscious.
Yes, I was. I was taken to the nearest hospital, and I was obviously put on life support, and I remained unconscious for almost a month.
Wow.
And again, unbeknown to me, and I can actually remember the time that I woke up in the hospital bed, and I didn't know where I was. I was totally disorientated. I couldn't feel anything, I couldn't move anything, and I could barely open one of my eyes. And when I did, the light was, it was excruciating just to open, just to open my eye and to see what was going on. But I regained consciousness, and then I started to work, as best I could to understand what it was that had actually happened to me. I was really disorientated at that time.
Your poor parents, they must have gone through absolute hell. And they must have been so grateful when you woke up at long last.
Absolutely. And during that time that I was unconscious, I was shown the records a long time afterwards as not to affect me, but there were 3 straight lines.
Wow.
So I actually, dare I say, left on 3 occasions, and one of them was just exceeding 2 minutes. So not a good time apparently. But I'm blessed to be here, and of course my journey then continued.
And so you had to then go through lots of operations, I suppose, to set the bones, and were they doing that while you were unconscious?
They weren't, no. There was lots of challenges that they had to look at, and even several months afterwards those challenges continued because everything was so badly broken. And let's use my right leg as an example. The femur, the top bone, exploded. The knee was shattered, the tibia fibula was shattered, the ankle was shattered. I have paralysis in my right leg. And the problem was, if they fixed the knee or the tibia fibula, but they had to remove the leg because the femur was so badly exploded, then why bother starting and operating and fixing the other damage? And likewise on the left-hand side, it was really a catch-22 for the surgeons. And eventually I was, back in the early 80s, there wasn't the facilities we have today, and it was traction. So I had pins through both legs, with weights hanging off the end of the bed. I had a brace on my head. My head was in traction because my skull was fractured. I had problems with my neck. My left arm was tied up in a sling and hanging from the ceiling. So I was trussed up in a pretty precarious predicament. And nobody really knew what part to start on first. So eventually they did start. They started repairing my left leg, and then they worked over to my right leg, 'cause my right leg was the worst one. But I'm blessed with the fact that I never lost my right leg, and the operations continued for many, many months. On my first time round, I remember spending 4 months in the hospital bed, to be released just for Christmas. So I was allowed out for Christmas for a couple of weeks, and then I had to go back in to continue operations. So another 3 months actually on my second visit to hospital, and I was in and out of hospital in 81, 82 for several months at a time. And I recently added the amount of time I've spent in the hospital bed, and it exceeds a year just through this accident alone.
What a trauma for what, you were 17 at the time?
Yes, 17, then into my 18th birthday, and you know, I was still relegated to a wheelchair, which again, I absolutely respect anyone that's in that predicament today, but back in the early 80s, there wasn't facilities for wheelchair users. It was a very, very tough time.
So what did you start to do? Did you start to, you obviously tried to get yourself walking again, and were you on crutches for a time?
Yes, yes. In those first early years, for the first couple of years, I used to be carried up the stairs to my bedroom. I wasn't able to use crutches to go up the stairs. My elbow was still very bad, and my arm where it was shattered was still, you know, repairing itself. And I had no strength. I was honestly just a skeleton covered with skin. I was that frail, and I really looked at a way that I could, you know, focus my mind to get better. I really wanted to walk again. I really wanted to go out from the front door and enjoy life once again. I was actually confined to my parents' house, and it was a lovely environment to be in, a very supportive family, but I really wanted to start venturing out again. And I remember, and it's really coming back to me, and sometimes it's quite difficult to speak about this, so please excuse me, but I remember one of the first times when I was up on crutches and I was barely walking. One of the biggest steps that I ever made was to literally stand outside of the front door and to see the world again. And that was such an achievement for me.
Yes.
And as the weeks and the months went by, I used to target myself to walk, you know, 10 yards and then 20 yards. And by the end of a couple of weeks, I wanted to walk to where the road was and then come back again. And I used to set myself these small, but what I thought were achievable goals, that every day, every week, I just wanted to go that bit further.
Wow. And so I'm sure that there are viewers out there, there are young men who probably just come off a motorbike or had a car crash, and you'll be such an inspiration to them because you're sitting there looking like a picture of health. But we know that there were other problems as well, and in fact we're going to do a second program in which we'll go into the heart problems that you had, which actually the heart injury was sustained at the time of the motorbike accident, but they didn't realize at the time, did they?
No, they didn't. It's one of these things that, and everyone uses the term that hindsight is a wonderful thing. Now, we shouldn't have hindsight if we have experience. So, and this is something I look at through the experience that I've been through. If I can share anything with anybody and they can look at what I've said and learn from it, then I've provided value. And that really is part of the journey that I'm on today. So if we look at what happened back in 1980, one of the reasons why my heart stopped, and I wasn't to find this out for many years afterwards, was the heart was actually torn. It was actually dislodged from where it was. That also had another consequence, and that was to create a weakness in the main aorta that comes out of the heart. No one knew that at the time, because had that been the case, and what I learned later is just that impact alone and just that problem alone kills people. People don't survive that. So, as I've been told by some of the top medical specialists in their field, just that one action alone, that one injury alone, should have left me dead back in 1980. That's why you don't see it commonly today, because people don't survive that.
Right. So your immune system must have been shattered, really.
Oh, I was totally and absolutely shattered. The one thing that I've learned through experience, and again, I still don't know what the future consequences will be, and that was all the drugs and the necessary drugs, you know, pain medication, antibiotics, and all of the other cocktail of ingredients that you're actually given in hospital. Thankfully, I'm alive and I'm blessed to be alive, and there would have been some good that was provided for me. But as I go through life and I start looking at the various medications I was given, I really don't know what future consequences they may or may not have. So I've become more aware of that now as well.
So that really got you into natural health and thinking about how you could get well and stay well in a natural way.
Yes, it did. I think one of the turning points for me was I was at a point where I was actually doing quite well. I'd shed my crutches had gone. I'd spent 4 to 5 years using walking sticks, and I finally relinquished my walking sticks, and I was just about able to stand unaided, and I really thought, I've done it. I'm there. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. Only to go back for a further consultation when one of the top surgeons looked at me, went through the x-rays they'd just taken and said, well actually, young lad, you're in your late 20s now. By the time you get to late 30s, early 40s, you must start preparing for being back in a wheelchair. And it was like a bomb just dropped. How when I had just achieved something in my life that was so significant, to be told that your body's going to deteriorate, your hips no good, your knees are no good, your ankles are just about holding on, to be told that I'd achieved all of that, only to be then looking at going back in a wheelchair again, it didn't sit well with me. So that was really the time that my whole method of thinking was, I've got to slow down the deterioration within my joints, within my bones, within my body. I've got to slow down, dare I say, the aging process, although mine would have been accelerated, to prevent the time that I go back in my wheelchair. That was something that really hit home so hard.
So you started doing some research, did you?
Yes, I did, absolutely. And research was quite difficult at that time because we weren't fortunate enough to have the internet. It was just at the phase where it was coming out. So I started to read books. I started to go down the library and see what was on offer, just to look at prevention and really understand what it was I needed to do for myself to avoid going back in the wheelchair so early.
And did you start to understand about the minerals, which have played such a huge part in your healing?
Yes, I did. It wasn't until a couple of years after that I was buying traditional health supplements from only a handful of shops that were available that I really stumbled across minerals. And what it was, I was reading an article or some work that was connected with Linus Pauling. As we know, Linus Pauling prepared one of the most bioavailable vitamin C products for us to benefit from. And part of what he was working with, there was a little line that just caught my attention, and it really said, why is it the vitamins that we have in our diet today aren't being utilized by the body as they should be? And one of the comments was, well, if the body is devoid of minerals, then the vitamins and the other nutrients we give it won't be absorbed or utilised as best they could be. And that was really one of the little sparks that caught my eye.
That's what I realised as a young nurse, and I was praying for something that I could give my patients, and then of course as a mother, my children and my grandchildren, something that they could drink, something that would really be building blocks or starting, spark plugs in their body, something to really help the immune system. So tell us what you did next, because I think you went to America, did you?
I did. I actually went to China firstly via Hong Kong. Right. I'd read that there was some research and some good supplies of what are termed as bioavailable minerals that were available from a company just over the border into China from Hong Kong. So I went to see the company, only really to be confused. And there was another company in America that were providing what was termed, and this is quite critical actually, a plant-based mineral or a plant-derived mineral. And that was really what I was looking for. The best way to view those types of minerals are food state minerals. So my journey ended up in America, and I took a look at a couple of companies that were producing a plant state or plant-derived mineral, and the rest is history. I was buying a liquid form or a liquid water to all intents and purposes, you could call it mineral water, but with a difference. And I was buying a year or 2 years' supply and shipping them back to myself in the UK.
Interesting. So that was quite an expensive way of doing it, obviously. And
Yes, it was.
you wanted to try and do something for other people as well, I know.
Yes, it was. It was. At the time, it was very expensive, and it's still costly today. But what value can you put on health? Now, if you presented me with a wheelchair today and said, Peter, you need to go back in that wheelchair, unless you paid me something not to be in that wheelchair, what price would you put on that? You can't, Felicity. It's one of these things that it is so hard to judge. So if it cost me, £10, £100, or even a lot more, today absolutely I would still do it because I know what the benefits are. But even then, my research suggested that just by mineralising my body, it would support my immune system. Everything else I was consuming, and my diet was changing. I was more focused on what I was eating as well, a lot more focused. So I was giving my body the best chance it would to not deteriorate as quickly as what I was told.
I must have a sip of my lovely minerals while we do this, because I
Excellent.
I have used these ever since I heard about them, from a Revelation viewer actually, Pamela, who told me about them, and they've been a tremendous help to me because having been so ill with cancer, obviously the immune system is very low and breathing problems. So these help tremendously. They really are great, and they're delicious to have as well. So the grandchildren like them, which is great. So I do thank you for what you've done. So what did you do next? You then bought up the company, did you? You brought it to England.
Well, it was a bit. There's a bit in between that I believe we'll touch on a bit later, where I was a consumer, and all I wanted to do initially was to learn, to understand, and just consume anything that would assist me in preventing my deterioration. And then, unbeknown to me, I had the aortic aneurysm, and I went through the whole episode regarding the removal and the repair of me once again after the aortic aneurysm. And it was after that, and being blessed to be here, because that in itself was another point where I should have been dead. Medically, I shouldn't be here on 2 occasions. And it was after I recovered from that I knew I just had to do something about it. There was this phenomenal product that is nature's own product. It just comes from a mine where there is prehistoric vegetate. We just mine the vegetate, we extract what are plant-derived or plant-state minerals, and in this case now we just evaporate the water after extraction and we put them into products that are easily shippable. Now, it was looking at that my whole life changed. What I was doing for work or what I was doing for business, it actually became irrelevant. Making money didn't seem to be worth it anymore. That there was a passion inside of me that I really knew I had to do something with what actually saved my life. If it wasn't for these minerals, I would be dead today.
Well, when God has saved our lives, we do have this passion to help other people. I certainly did that. And, I said Psalm 118, I shall not die but live and proclaim what the Lord has done. And when I discovered that natural medicine, the B17 in my case, helped so much, I had to write the book. I called it God's Healing Word. I had to write the book about it. And I know that, you've kept the minerals out of the hands of Big Pharma and out of the high street shops in order to keep the price down for people, haven't you?
Yes. What we've tried to do, it's all about benefiting the individual. There is an educational process that's needed about minerals, and hopefully today's programme will share some of that education with your viewers. And what we wanted to do was to, in a very nice, humble way, is to share the benefits through people we know, so people actually understand and are educated about what it is we have. If you were to put these minerals on the shelf in an average health food store, they would just sit alongside other minerals, and nobody would really understand the difference. And if I may, probably one of the best explanations is, and I use this quite often, if you were to take a chunk of, for example, iron ore, and then a couple of leaves of spinach, And everyone knows the body needs iron for various benefits. Now, if I took a chunk of iron ore and just ground it up into a powder and asked you to consume that as iron, you wouldn't be very happy with me. But this is what virtually all mineral supplements are. They're ground up rocks and clays. They're sometimes bonded with an amino acid to try and fool the body into believing that they are a food state mineral, and they're not. Whereas the spinach contains iron that nature has grown through the spinach. And without going into too much detail, it's where the roots pick the minerals from the soil and convert them from a metallic mineral into what we call a plant-based or a food state mineral. So the body loves the iron that comes from spinach, but the iron that comes from ground up rocks and clays and other salts is not necessarily the iron that the body needs. So the reason why we do what we do and how we share the word is, one, obviously to keep costs down, but importantly to explain to people the difference between the two forms of irons in this case, or in fact any other minerals.
So really it's a matter of education, isn't it? And this is what I try to do with the programs, to educate people. Because
Absolutely.
we don't need medication, we need education. Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely. So tell me how the process really works when you get the plants, which you then convert into a little capsule that you can drop into water and they dissolve.
Okay, I'll run you through the process.
Yes.
What we've got in effect is a prehistoric vegetate deposit, and if you looked at the vegetate a bit like a compost heap that's been preserved in time. So had it fossilized, it would turn into coal. So it's what coal would be pre-fossilization. So in effect you've got ancient peat that has been encapsulated for many years.
Probably since the flood.
Correct. Yes.
Yes.
For many years, and you could even say that it's been encapsulated for our hour of need, which is where we are today, and all we do, we just take what is necessary, and we use pure reverse osmosis water, just to extract the water-soluble minerals.
Yeah.
And this is quite a crucial point. So it's just the water-soluble minerals that are extracted into or leached into the water. And then we filter everything away, and we're left with pure water with the plant-derived minerals in suspense in the water. And then we've got a very special process where I won't use the word evaporate the water, but the water is taken off. And it's a low temperature process that we use, and we're left with a powder. Now that powder is pure mineral powder, nothing added, nothing taken away. And that's exactly what we put in one of the products that we've just dropped in our glass of water.
Yeah.
And also we encapsulate that into veggie-based capsules, and we just sell the plain powder as it is. So from what I do now, what was a passion, something that saved my life, has now turned into, dare I call it a business, or is it a work of passion? I find it difficult sometimes to explain what I do when people ask.
It's incredible what you've done, because through being through such a difficult time, you're actually making life better for so many people. When I first heard about them, I noticed that within 3 days my eyesight was better. I've always been very lucky. I've had good eyesight, but where I live up in the mountains, I found that the mountain opposite, I'm 76 now, was just starting to get a little bit blurred. I thought, that's very strange, but I mean, I'm so lucky. I haven't had glasses all my life. But after 3 days, I noticed everything was much sharper. And somebody actually has got rid of cataracts. It's definitely really good for the eyes. Takes away a lot of pain, I find. I don't have any arthritic pain. And that is such a joy for people, especially people living in the UK, where it's damp and cold. And, people do have arthritic pain, don't they?
Yes.
I know you've had so much pain in your life. And when we've been in that kind of awful trauma, it's so wonderful to get people out of pain.
It is, Felicity, and I don't think the programme is long enough to share with you, and indeed the viewers, the amount of people that we've had come to us to say, wow, my psoriasis has gone. Psoriasis is a very interesting ailment that people have, And I mean, people have taken so many before and after pictures and kindly sent them to us. And this is the reward for what we do. When we see stories or hear stories, or we have people ringing up saying, especially with a lot of people with, let's look at constipation. There are so many people that, and my mother, bless her, that were constipated. And within days, in some cases, people start taking the product and the system starts to work again naturally. And it's endless, the amount of testimonials we have. And I think the key thing to look at is what we're doing. We're giving the body what the food that we consume doesn't have anymore. So the minerals that should be in our foods that aren't are what we're now putting back. And if the very, very basis of everything that we consume relies on minerals and the processes that minerals assist, then it just makes common sense that we can eat the best and the healthiest, vitamin-based vegetables, protein-based foods. But if they're going to perform and release their nutrition even better when the body is mineralized, it just makes perfect sense. And it's results-driven testimonials that we're finding that really are actually helping the word spread.
That's amazing. And then, of course, once you're well mineralized, you can then start absorbing the vitamins, can't you? So, Peter, it's been really fascinating. We're going to make another program in a minute. But it's been wonderful to hear about your amazing recovery from that catastrophic motorbike accident. And I do congratulate you for really putting all your suffering to the most amazing use for the rest of us. So bless you. Thank you very much. If you'd like to speak to your camera with any little message of hope for anyone who's going through a rough time physically at the moment, would you like to just speak to your camera?
I will, thank you. Well, Felicity, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for having me on the show. And I've got to thank everybody behind the scenes here who are doing absolutely admirable job. But really, it's about each and every one of us. What we need to do first and foremost is think about what it is we're doing. Give some thought to what we're consuming, not just for today, but for the future. As Felicity kindly mentioned, we will do another show. And during that show, I'd like to explain more about what it is that we consume in the early part or even the mid part of our lives.
Thank you, Peter.
That may actually benefit us later.
Thank you, Peter. That's absolutely great. It's wonderful to have you on the show. We're so looking forward to you coming back on the next one. So God bless you, and thank you for flying all the way to Spain to be with us today. God bless you.